Hello and welcome to another guide for Star Wars: Old Republic. Today we're going to be looking at Flavor of the Month. Alright, so actually what I'm doing today is we're going to be updating my Madness Balance Guide for 7.2. A lot of these changes actually came into effect with 7.1.1. I've just finally gotten around to giving you a guide, so here it is. The new best single target rotation and a few of the other updates that we've had since the last guides come out to let you keep playing Madness and Balance the best you possibly can. Okay, so here are the stats and the gearing that you're going to be wanting to use for this build. Pretty much the exact same as the previous guide. Again, this is just an update, so it's not going to be the full guide. Go check out the other guide if you need any other info or want to see any of the other builds that are still useful in this class, just not necessarily the best single target damage. The other update in addition to this that we're going to have is we now have an AoE tactical called Killing Field, and it allows you to spread your demolish. So nothing different there. All you have to do is equip the tactical and just play the previous rotation, or you can even use the Plagmaster rotation with it if you want. The area that we're really going to see a lot of change is going to be under our ability tree. So they made some recent changes to increase the amount of damage that the dots do, which makes Plagmaster a much stronger build than it ever used to be. And through a lot of testing and help from other members of the community, we've been able to come up with a single target rotation that's static, very easy to remember, and you don't have to get into that complicated like, do this, do that, which one's next, oh my gosh. Without further ado, here is our ability tree. I will quickly go through some of the choices so you kind of know why we're doing this. So, level 23, Unrelenting Affliction, your death marks or your force suppression stacks, there's going to be a 50% chance of getting them refunded. We're going to be using Plagmaster or Teachings of Rajvari, depending on what side you're on, and that's going to allow us to blow up all of our dots at once and have them do a ton of juicy damage. We also want to be taking Downfall or Shattered Connection. This allows us to have more damage from our death marks or our force suppression stacks. Now, 43, you do have a couple choices here. You don't have to go with Corrupted Defense or Warden of the Force. This is great though, 15% flat DR almost the entire time. But if you're looking for a more experienced build and you want to get the most amount of damage, and as long as the fight is 6 minutes or longer, Critical Movement or Enhanced Force Speed will be your friend. And it's also sometimes a really good choice on fights if you just need extra mobility and be able to have force speed up way more frequently. 51, just take the extra mobility, it's great. Surging Speed at 64 or Metaphysical Alacrity, wow, that's a lot to say. Generally, Phase Walk is the best choice. If you are playing by yourself, or sometimes in Flashpoint content, you can find that Whirlwind or Force Lift might be better. 73, I wouldn't say there's a default choice. I leave it on Corrupted Flesh or Mind Ward. This is also a great one too though, Immersion or Egress. There's your choices. Now there are a couple other builds that players still can play I haven't talked about before. There may be some situations where you want to be taking your Threat Drop and DCD Cloud Mine. It's very rare that I actually need this. The class gives itself a lot of self-healing, and if you're already using Corrupted Defense, it's reasonably able to take a few hits. So Cloud Mine isn't needed very often. So Deathbrand is, you pair it up with Creeping End instead of Downfall. It's not a build you're going to play very often. The only reason why I really suggest playing this Deathbrand build is if somebody is way too lazy to position your AoE while standing at max range from an enemy, because positioning issues, you have to manually place it rather than double clicking the hotkey. Okay, so let's jump right into the Plagmaster build and teach you how to do it. The old single target build is still applicable if you don't want to use Plagmaster. We want to do Death Field, followed by a Force Leech, followed by a single Force Lightning, and then we're going to have our dot block where we apply Creeping Tear, Affliction, Demolish, Shock all three of them, reapply Creeping Tear and Affliction. Then we're going to finish off with two fillers, which is generally just going to be one Force Lightning and a second Force Lightning that we finish a little early. The main thing is Shock has a cooldown of 16.7 seconds, and we want to make sure that we're getting back to Shock as soon as it's coming off cooldown. So for me and the way that I play, I've been finding that I have to clip that second Force Lightning to make it a little bit shorter so I come back in time. A few other things you want to know about the rotation. You should always be using your Recklessness or Force Potency at the beginning of the rotation. Force Speed, if you are not taking critical movement, you always want to be using that on Force Leech because it's your heaviest hitting ability to buff with that. And if you are taking the other one and you're using it for the damage increase, just use it on cooldown, doesn't matter. As far as using Polarity Shift, I generally make sure that I only use it at the beginning of a shock, so I want to use Polarity Shift right before shock because it keeps my rotation consistent, I don't have to change anything, and it's not a significant damage loss to delay it by a few seconds, But yeah, you can definitely be using Polarity Shift on cooldown. Just keep in mind, you're probably not going to be able to get to Shock and have it be off cooldown without adding one extra Force Lightning in the rotation. Be very aware of trying to get back to Shock properly in the rotation. But for now, let's jump over to what the opener is. So the opener is a rotation with a slight modification. We do not want to be using Force Leech unless we have Affliction on the target, because that buffs the amount of damage it does. So this ability is not useful in our opener at all. We can pre-cast it before combat starts. So if your tank's giving you a nice countdown, or you are the person who's going to be starting combat, we want to buff whatever we start with a Force Speed. There's no reason not to. If you're going straight into combat and you don't have that time to pre-cast your Force Leech, throw it out the window, start with a Death Field. Then we're going to swap our Force Lightning and our Creeping Terror around. And the reason we want to do this is we don't want to cast a Force Lightning just to get the stacks and have it provide no other damage buff. We want to make sure our Tempest of Road Tactical is ticking. So we're going to put out our Creeping Terror first, and then we're going to use Force Lightning to get our 4 stacks that we need to proc Demolish to be an instant cast. So that's it. Those are the only changes to your opener. You aren't going to be using Recklessness on the opener. You're going to wait until you start the rotation from the beginning again, so you've got all of your buffs up, and you usually want to use Polarity Shift right on that first shock, along with you can use your Adrenal. So we want to be very aware of how we're canceling that second Force Lightning. If you're canceling it without Recklessness being available, you can just spam Death Field until it goes off. Timing works out, you don't have to worry about making a mistake. If you're using Recklessness, you just got to really watch and check for that remaining cast time and make sure you don't cancel it too early. So as always, have a great day, and we'll see you guys in the next video.